Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode in the program. Today, we are going to be talking about pricing, which is exciting because this is how you make money. All right. So repositioning your pricing. Let's talk about today's itinerary. All right. So why pricing matters, the types of pricing models, and of course, selecting the best model for you. All right. So why pricing matters. Obviously, most businesses fail because of cash flow and low margins. All right. This is really important to understand. A lot of people overlook it. They start saying, I'm going to charge $1,000 for my service, but then they don't realize that, a few months down the road, it actually costs them $900 to provide that service, leaving you with 10% profit margin and you scraping by as a business owner. You might as well just get a job at that point. Okay. So the beauty of the agency space is it has high profit margins because your expenses are very low. However, you need your cash flow to also be solid so that you can maintain healthy growth when the business goes through its ups and downs. Again, every business goes through its ups and downs, but the beauty of the agency space and the beauty of what I'm going to be showing you guys in the later modules of this program is to maintain healthy growth by A, having really good lead acquisition systems, B, having really good service delivery so that you can retain those clients, and then obviously C, having good retention through good service delivery and through good systems on the back end. Okay. So again, aim for the 65% profit margin each month. All right. So you need to run some calculations. This is going to be very, very important. So let's talk about the types of pricing structures. All right. So retainer only, you charge a retainer only for your service. It's a good intro pricing structure and it's easy to maintain. However, most businesses are typically opposed to this if your offering guarantee isn't very strong. Okay, so an example of this is if you charge, $2,500 a month or, $7,000 for 3 months as a one-time payment, which gives you 10% off to that client, right? This is a very simple mainstream sort of service offer that basically, a lot of agencies utilize, and it's not bad. And it's good for a lot of beginners, but you just have to be confident in what you do and provide a good guarantee because a lot of people for a long time have been utilizing the retainer only method. And I think a lot of business owners are just now used to it. So it's really good to at least position yourself in a different way and communicate in a different way if you are going the retainer only route. Okay. The other way is retainer plus performance model. So that's a monthly base fee, which is your retainer, plus performance fees. Okay. So a solid monthly fee to ensure stability and recurring revenue, plus a fee based on results that you generate. Okay. So you can sell the retainer as a one-time payment as well. So example of this is $2,500 a month plus 10% of the ROAS. Okay. This is a very typical e-commerce offer. All right. Or another example of this is, $1,000 a month plus $25 per lead, which could be used if you're a lead generation agency. Now, depending on how much the typical lead is worth to that business. Let's say, if you're providing leads to let's say a flooring retailer. I can use this because I used to work for my dad's company who is in the interior design space. Typically these jobs are worth anywhere from $5,000 all the way to $100 to $200K, right? So depending on what that average is, you can start to price target how much you're going to charge per lead you're providing, right? So if you know that the average lead is going to provide a business with $5,000 of, let's just say profit for this instance, that you could probably get away with charging, maybe $200, $300, $400 per lead. And of course, for those of you in lead gen, you have to understand obviously the close rates and all those percentages and things like that. Okay. But that is the retainer plus performance model. Now, there's also the performance only model. Okay. So you only charge a performance fee. So this model is an easy sell because you can approach it as a risk-free offer. You're only being paid on the results that you add to a business or their bottom line. So example of this is, again, 10% of the ROAS, 5% of the total revenue. That's more of an equity share model. It's very, very simple, right? I would actually say something that works really, really well right now is if you are trying to go more of the performance only model, because it is such a low barrier to entry for a lot of these, prospects, and it's an exciting offer that you're offering them. One thing that you can do is you can charge something of a setup fee plus the monthly reoccurring equity share and performance fee that you're charging. Okay, so the one-time setup fee can be $5K. That kind of gives you some leeway to be able to handle that first months of expenses, get your team members paid, pay for your software, stuff like that. And then ongoing, it's just a performance fee only. Okay, the beauty of this model is you're actually able to sign longer partnerships and contracts with your clients because you're not actually charging them on a monthly basis on a set rate, right? So they can't do the calculations in their head right away and say, hey, listen, we're going to sign a 5-month contract with you and you're charging $5K. That's going to be $25K, right? That sounds like a lot. But if you say, hey, listen, first month, it's a setup fee, it's $5K. Ongoing, you're only paying us for the results we bring you. They're actually going to want to pay you more if that makes sense. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of the performance only model. Now, the last model, which is, I would say, probably the most complex one, is the setup fee plus monthly retainer plus equity model. Okay, so you have a high retainer fees and performance included. So this model is an elevated and more higher level way of approaching your pricing. This type of pricing structure relies on your utmost ability to deliver because you're coming into a company and guaranteeing massive growth for them on a long-term basis, right? Growth that will easily cover the cost of working with you by 3 to 5x minimum. Right. So typically this is the type of model you would use when you're positioning yourself as a growth partner agency. Some of you may or may not have heard of that sort of positioning when you become a traditional agency owner and you start to move into like more of a growth partner sort of agency. These are the models that you can basically expect a growth partner agency to work on. So your job isn't to directly provide each and every single service. Although you may have some people in-house delivering the service, your job is to just put the right people in the right place to deliver the service within that business sales and marketing department. Okay. So good example of this. All right. You are basically acting as that business's internal CMO and you are leading these operations. So for instance, let's say I jump into, Nike. Okay. Let's just say, because everyone knows Nike. If you jump into Nike, maybe my agency can only handle the paid ads. So we only manage paid ads, but now our job is growth, because if you're a growth partner, your only operation that you're focused on is growth. So you need to now position yourself in a place where it's like, okay, listen, my agency internally can only handle the paid ads. We need to find people for creating content, editing content, for email marketing, for traditional marketing like newspapers, TV ads, all these different things. And we need to put those people in the right place and make sure that this system is just a well-oiled machine, right? So that's what growth partners do. And that's why these types of pricing structures get so complex, okay? You can make an egregious amount of money. And we have signed deals like this where we actually utilize basically our agency's internal systems and service deliveries. And then we also outsource a lot of white label partner services as well too. And they're highly profitable. They're incredible partnerships, but they're complex. And it requires that you understand your niche, your industry, your service delivery, like at the pinnacle of your skill set. Okay, I will tell you that, because if you have any lapse of judgment or you don't know if a certain client is qualified enough, it can really go south really quick. Okay. So again, this just comes with more complexities, but without, rambling too much on, a good example of this is, again, these types of contracts usually last 6 to 12 months at a minimum, because again, your job is now growth, right? You're not making these short-term claims. You're saying we're coming into your business for 12 months or more, and we're going to help you grow. Okay. And then, like I said, they require a high level understanding of your niche. Okay, so an example of this is, a $7,500 setup fee plus a $4,000 per month retainer plus 5% equity in the profit or revenue of that business. Again, these numbers sound crazy, but you would be surprised at some of the deals that, my agency has done, or some of the other agency owners that I've talked to who are transitioning to that more growth partner, as a whole in the agency space. Like I said, it's a really cool model, but it's complex. So don't overcomplicate things for yourself, especially if you're a beginner, and especially if your business really isn't at the place where it's doing, $50K or more. So selecting your price model, right? So choosing the best structure. What is an easier sell for you and makes the most sense to align with your offer? How much of an ROI do you believe you can provide that prospect? Identify which model above is best for you based on what you offer and the service is, okay? What most don't realize, right? So charging cookie cutter pricing doesn't work in most cases for agencies. You need to become malleable with your pricing unless it's such a strict procedure that you deliver for everyone that is the exact same. So a good example of this is with e-commerce brands or with info products. Those clients, the way that we charge them is different every single time. Like almost every single one of our clients is on a different either retainer or performance fee model, or, we have those like handful of clients that are on that growth partnership model. Like it's so custom that, I just have to have such a high level of understanding of the niche and the services that we're providing, and also knowing what questions to ask that client so that I can write that down and basically like take all that information and then provide them with like an accurate quote that makes sense for them, right? Because the thing is an example of this for e-commerce is, if you are spending money on ads and then you're also charging like a monthly retainer and performance fee, those are all expenses, right? And if an e-commerce brand only has like 50% margins or 40% profit margins on their products, it's your break-even ROAS is going to be like a 3 or a 4, which is going to be difficult to achieve for the most part, right? It's not going to be that profitable for them. So these are things that you need to take into account, okay? So Again, make sure that you write down the expenses that your agency incurs so that you can identify where your pricing needs to be at in order to achieve no less than 60% profit margins each month. So you're going to have to run some calculations on your end, guys, because again, you don't want to be positioning yourself in a place where you're charging your niche too much that they can't afford it. And you don't want to be charging too little because now you can't actually make a profitable agency for yourself. Okay. So things to take into account: contractors, employees, what they cost, the subscriptions and softwares that you need, marketing and advertising costs, accounting, etc. Okay. So take into consideration all of the expenses that you have as an agency owner, and then write those down and then identify that at scale. How many clients do you need to cover those costs? And based off of where your next milestone goal is, what you need to do. Okay. So action steps: write down your cost of running the agency, write down what your ideal goal income is, crunch the numbers, and identify what you need to be charging a client in order to maintain above 60% profit margins in your agency. Identify which pricing structure you're confident in selling based on your current offer and service. And lastly, different sales structures come with barriers to entry within your ability to sell and deliver. So make sure you discuss your options with those within the community. Okay. So like I said, use the Discord community, be able to bounce some ideas off of, what people are charging and how they're going about their offers and how they're delivering their service, things like that. Okay. Again, the pricing structures, it's not super, you don't need to overwhelm yourself or, try to, spend tons of time on this, because in the grand scheme of things, as long as you're just charging a good amount, you're fine, but you need to crunch some numbers. Okay. That is probably the most important aspect of this module, is you need to crunch those numbers to make sure that you are sitting at above 60% profit margin whenever you're working with these clients. Okay. And even higher. I know some agency owners that are sitting between like the, 80 to 90%, just because like the way that they've actually scaled up their business. It's absolutely mad. So ladies and gentlemen, follow these action steps for today's module. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers.